Ambassador Veltara stood in the great crystal chamber of the Galactic Council. Her forearms shook as she looked at the hundreds of alien faces staring back at her. The chamber was huge, with walls made of clear crystal that showed the stars outside. Representatives from 50 different worlds sat in floating chairs that glowed with soft light. Veltara was a Catherian. Her people looked like tall, thin trees that could walk and talk. Her skin was green like leaves, and her forearms moved like branches in the wind when she was nervous. Right now, she was very nervous. "Honored members of the council," she began. Her voice was soft and musical, like wind through a forest. "I come before you today with terrible news. The Ravager horde is coming to our part of the galaxy." The chamber became very quiet. Even the usual humming of the translation machines seemed to get softer. Everyone knew about the Ravagers. They were the monsters that every peaceful species feared. Veltara continued. 3 star systems have already fallen to them. The gentlefolk of Kepler 442 are gone. The crystal singers of the Vega system were enslaved last month. The plant weavers of Proxima sent out one last message before their world went dark. Her voice broke a little. "We think we have 14 standard cycles before they reach Catherian space." Council leader Zephyron sat in the center chair. He was tall and looked like a giant insect, with 6 arms and large black eyes. His kind, the Nexari, had been keeping peace in the galaxy for over 1,000 years, but even they had never faced anything like the Ravagers. "Ambassador Veltara," Zephyron said, his voice clicking like a cricket. "What exactly are you asking from this council?" Veltara's leaves rustled with fear. "We need help. Any help you can give us. Medical supplies for our refugees. Ships to help move our people to safety, maybe some soldiers to help guard our evacuation points. We know we cannot fight the Ravagers alone. No one can." She was right about that. The Ravagers were different from every other species in the galaxy. Most aliens were peaceful. They traded with each other, shared knowledge, and solved problems by talking. War was something that happened in old stories, not in real life. But the Ravagers were made for war. They were big, strong, and cruel. They had red skin like dried blood and teeth like knives. Their ships were black and covered with weapons. They took what they wanted and destroyed everything else. They had been attacking peaceful worlds for over 200 years, and no one had ever stopped them. "The problem," said Ambassador Chenry from the floating cities, "is that none of us are warriors. My people build beautiful sky cities, but we have no weapons. The crystal singers make lovely music, but they cannot fight. Even the strongest among us, the rock builders, only know how to move mountains, not destroy armies." Other voices joined in. The representatives all agreed that the Ravager threat was real and terrible, but none of them knew how to fight a war. Their ships were built for exploring and trading, not for battles. Their people studied art and science, not weapons and tactics. "What about hiring mercenaries?" asked the delegate from the water worlds. "Surely someone in the galaxy knows how to fight." Zephyron made a sad clicking sound. "The few warrior species we know about either joined the Ravagers long ago or were destroyed by them. The Ravagers make sure that anyone who could threaten them disappears." The discussion went on for hours. Ideas were suggested and then shot down. Send spy ships to learn about Ravager weaknesses? The Ravagers had sensors that could detect any ship from light years away. Try to negotiate? The Ravagers did not talk, they only took. Hide all the peaceful species in secret locations. There were not enough hidden places in the galaxy. As the day wore on, Veltara felt hope slipping away like water through her root fingers. The council meant well, but they were just as helpless as her own people. They could offer supplies and evacuation ships, but that would only delay the inevitable. The Ravagers would keep coming until every peaceful world was either destroyed or enslaved. Just as Veltara was about to give up, a young aide rushed into the chamber. He whispered something to Zephyron, who suddenly sat up straighter. "Wait," Zephyron announced to the chamber. "I have just been reminded of something. There is one new member species that we have not considered." He touched his control pad, and a hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a small blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. "The humans," Zephyron said. "They joined our alliance only 5 standard cycles ago. Their planet is listed as a Class 12 death world." the chamber filled with confused murmurs. Most species came from gentle worlds with mild weather and friendly animals. A Class 12 death world was almost unimaginable to them. It meant a planet where everything was trying to kill everything else. "I remember reading about them," said Ambassador Mortex from the peaceful valleys. "Their world has terrible storms, poisonous creatures, and weather that can kill. But somehow they not only survived, they became the dominant species. The report said they actually fight wars against each other for practice." "Fight wars for practice?" Veltara's leaves rustled with confusion. "What does that mean?" Zephyron pulled up more information. "It means they have been fighting and killing each other for their entire history. They have weapons we cannot even understand, bombs that can destroy entire cities, ships that sail under the water to attack enemies in secret, flying machines that drop death from the sky." The chamber became very quiet again, but this time it was a different kind of quiet. Before, it had been the quiet of fear and hopelessness. Now, it was the quiet of people thinking about something new and strange. "You are suggesting," said the delegate from the Garden Worlds slowly, "that we ask these Deathworlders to help us fight the Ravagers?" "Why not?" Zephyron asked. "They understand war. They know about weapons and fighting. If anyone in the galaxy could stand up to the Ravagers, it would be a species that comes from a world where everything is trying to kill them." Veltara felt something new growing in her chest. It was not quite hope, but it was not despair either. Maybe there was a chance after all. "What kind of help could they provide?" she asked. Zephyron looked at the human file again. "According to our records, they have something they call a military. It seems to be a group of people whose only job is to fight and protect others. They have schools where they teach young humans how to use weapons and work together in battles." "And they would help us?" Veltara asked. "Even though they do not know us?" "There is only one way to find out," Zephyron replied. "We send a message to Earth and ask for their aid. What is the worst that could happen? They say no, and we are no worse off than we are now." The vote was unanimous. Even though the idea of asking Deathworlders for help was scary, it was their only hope. The message would be sent to Earth immediately, asking for whatever military aid the humans could spare. As Veltara left the council chamber that day, she wondered what kind of beings these humans really were. Would they be as cruel as the Ravagers? Would they demand payment that her people could not afford? Or would they be something else entirely? She had no way of knowing that she had just set in motion events that would change the galaxy forever. The humans were indeed different from every other species, but not in the way anyone expected. The humans did not think small when it came to helping their friends. Admiral Park Ji-won stood in the war room aboard Sol Prime, the largest space station humanity had ever built. It hung in orbit around Earth like a metal moon, bristling with weapons and sensors. The war room was deep inside the station, protected by thick armor and shield generators. The room was filled with screens showing star maps, ship positions, and tactical data. Around the big table sat the best military minds that humanity had to offer. These were people who had spent their lives learning how to fight and win wars. Admiral Park was a small woman with sharp eyes and gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had been fighting in one war or another for 30 years. Her uniform was covered with ribbons and medals from battles most civilians had never heard of. When she spoke, everyone listened. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," she said, looking at the message on her tablet. "An alien species is facing complete extermination, and the Galactic Council's response is to send them medical supplies and evacuation ships." Captain Lee Dongwu nodded from across the table. He was a big man with scars on his hands from when he had served as a Marine before becoming a ship captain. "That appears to be their standard response to military threats, Admiral. They don't seem to understand the concept of fighting back." Dr. Kim Sora was the only civilian in the room, but she belonged there. As humanity's chief expert on alien species, she had been studying every piece of information about the galaxy since first contact 5 years ago. She was young with kind eyes behind thick glasses, but her mind was sharp as any weapon. "The problem is cultural," Dr. Kim explained. "Most alien species evolved on peaceful worlds. They never had to compete with predators or fight for resources. War is literally foreign to them. They solve conflicts by talking and sharing." Fleet. Captain Oh Min-ho leaned forward. He commanded humanity's carrier groups, the floating cities of space that carried hundreds of fighter ships. His pilots called him Iron O because he never backed down from a fight. What about these Ravagers? They obviously know how to fight. They're different, Dr. Kim replied, pulling up a hologram of a Ravager warrior. The image showed a creature that looked like a cross between a lizard and a demon. It was 8 feet tall, covered in red scales, with claws like knives and teeth like a shark. They're from a world even more dangerous than Earth, but unlike us, they never learned cooperation. They only know how to take and destroy. Commander Yoon Jae-sung, the intelligence officer, had been quietly reading reports. He was thin and nervous-looking, but his mind could process information faster than any computer. Admiral, the numbers are disturbing. The Ravagers have destroyed or enslaved over 40 civilizations in the past 2 centuries. Their fleet consists of approximately 2,000 ships. No one has ever successfully resisted them. No one has ever tried to resist them, Captain Lee corrected. There's a difference. Admiral Park studied the star charts showing Ravager movements. Red arrows pointed toward peaceful worlds, like a disease spreading through the galaxy. Tell me about their tactics, Commander Yoon. Simple and effective, Yoon replied. They show up with overwhelming force, demand surrender, and then take everything they want. Most species give up without firing a shot. The few that try to fight use merchant ships with improvised weapons against dedicated warships. It's not even a contest. Of course it's not, growled Captain O. You can't fight a war with cargo haulers and scientific survey ships. What were they thinking? Dr. Kim spoke up gently. They weren't thinking like warriors, Captain O. They were thinking like the peaceful beings they are. They hoped that if they showed they were not a threat, the Ravagers would leave them alone. How's that working out for them? Captain Lee asked dryly. Not well, Dr. Kim admitted. The Ravagers see peaceful behavior as weakness. To them, anyone who won't fight deserves to be enslaved. Admiral Park had been quiet for several minutes, studying the data and thinking. Everyone in the room knew that look. It meant she was planning something big. Gentlemen, lady, she said finally, the Galactic Council asked us for aid. They didn't specify what kind of aid. They just said they need help against the Ravagers. Captain Lee smiled slowly. He knew Admiral Park well enough to see where this was going. What exactly are you thinking, Admiral? I'm thinking, Park said, standing up and walking to the star map, that these aliens are about to learn the difference between how peaceful species give aid and how humans give aid. She touched the map, and it zoomed in on Catherian space. The Ravager fleet was marked with red symbols, moving steadily toward the helpless plant people's worlds. When humans give aid, Admiral Park continued, we don't just treat the symptoms. We cure the disease. We don't just help people run away from bullies. We stop the bullies. Commander Yoon looked up from his tablet. Admiral, are you suggesting we intervene militarily? The Council only asked for medical supplies and evacuation support. The Council, Admiral Park said firmly, asked for help from a species that has been fighting wars since we learned to walk upright. Did they really think we would send a few hospital ships and call it a day? Dr. Kim looked concerned. Admiral, we're talking about taking on a force that has conquered half the galaxy. The Ravagers have ships and weapons we've never seen before. We don't know what we're up against. We know enough, Captain Lee said. We know they prey on peaceful species that don't fight back. We know they've never faced real resistance. And we know they're about to find out what happens when you threaten humanity's friends. Fleet Captain O was already thinking like a military planner. How big a fleet are we talking about, Admiral? The Ravagers have 2,000 ships. We have maybe 800 combat vessels if we strip every defensive post and recall every patrol. Admiral Park's smile was cold as winter. Captain O, who said anything about fighting fair? The Ravagers want to be predators? Fine, but they're about to learn that in nature there's always a bigger predator. She turned to Commander Yoon. Send a message to Earth Command, full fleet mobilization. Every ship, every Marine, every pilot who can hold a weapon. I want our entire Navy assembled and ready to move within 72 hours. The entire fleet? Yoon asked, making sure he understood correctly. Admiral, that will leave Earth completely undefended. Earth won't need defending if we do this right, Park replied. The best defense is a good offense. We're going to hit the Ravagers so hard that anyone else thinking about threatening peaceful species will remember this day for the next 1,000 years. Captain Lee stood up. What are your orders, Admiral? We're going to give the Kytherians exactly what they asked for, Park said. Aid, human-style aid, which means we're going to solve their Ravager problem permanently. Dr. Kim shook her head in amazement. The Galactic Council has no idea what they've just unleashed, do they? No, Admiral Park agreed. They asked for help from a Deathworld species. They're about to learn what that really means. When humans help our friends, we don't just bandage the wound. We eliminate the threat. Over the next 3 days, the space around Earth became busier than it had ever been. Ships that had been scattered across human space came racing home. Cargo vessels were quickly converted to carry troops and supplies. Factories that normally made civilian goods switched to producing weapons and ammunition. The news networks tried to keep up with what was happening, but the military kept most details secret. All anyone knew was that humanity was preparing for the largest military operation in its history. In the war room, Admiral Park watched the preparations with satisfaction. Soon, the galaxy would learn that when you threatened humanity's allies, you didn't get a warning. You got a funeral. The Ravagers had spent 2 centuries terrorizing peaceful species who couldn't fight back. But they had made one critical mistake. They had threatened the friends of the one species in the galaxy that not only could fight back, but actually enjoyed it. Captain Lee looked at the growing fleet and grinned. Admiral, I think the Ravagers are about to have a very bad day. Several very bad days, Admiral Park corrected. We're going to make sure this lesson sticks. The edge of Kytherian space had been quiet for thousands of years. It was a peaceful border where merchant ships came and went, carrying seeds and farming equipment and art between friendly worlds. The only military presence was a few small patrol boats that were really just flying police stations. But today, space itself seemed to tear open. The first ships to come through the hyperspace transit points were scouts. Small, fast vessels that appeared in flashes of blue light and immediately spread out to secure the area. Behind them came destroyers, their hulls black as night and bristling with weapons that no Kytherian had ever imagined. Then came the cruisers, ships the size of small cities, their armor thick enough to stop asteroids. Each one carried enough firepower to level a continent. But even those were nothing compared to what came next. Ambassador Veltara stood on the observation deck of Harmony's Rest, the largest space station in Kytherian space, her 4 arms pressed against the transparent, aluminum windows, as she watched something impossible happen before her eyes. Dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace like metal mountains. Each one was over 2 miles long and covered with gun turrets, missile launchers, and weapons that had no names in the Kytherian language. They moved slowly, but Veltara could feel their power even through the station's thick walls. By the great tree, whispered Science Coordinator Lim Tae-kyung. He was one of the few Kytherians who studied military history as a hobby. His green skin had turned pale yellow with shock. Those aren't aid ships. Those are engines of war. Behind, the dreadnoughts came carriers, floating cities that launched clouds of small fighter ships like angry insects. Each fighter was piloted by a human warrior trained from childhood to fly and fight in the vacuum of space. And still they kept coming. Supply ships, troop transports, hospital ships that looked more like floating fortresses, command vessels bristling, with communication arrays. Each ship bore the same symbol, a blue and green planet surrounded by stars with the words United Earth Navy written in letters that seemed to glow with determination. How many are there? Asked Station Commander Hyun-seok, his voice barely a whisper. He was trying to count them on his sensors, but the numbers kept growing. Over 300 confirmed, replied the sensor operator, a young Kytherian named Jin A, whose job had been to track peaceful cargo ships. And more are still arriving. The communication board lit up with incoming messages. The voice that came through was crisp, professional, and speaking a language that the translation computers took a moment to process. Kytherian Command. This is Captain Lee Dong-woo of the United Earth Navy vessel Incheon. We received your council's request for assistance against the Ravager threat, permission to dock and coordinate defensive operations. Veltara stared at the massive ship that had just identified itself. The Incheon was enormous, easily 3 times the size of Harmony's Rest. Its hull was scarred from old battles, and weapon ports covered its surface like the pores on a warrior's skin. "Captain Lee," Veltara managed to say into her communicator, We requested medical aid and evacuation support from the Galactic Council. This appears to be a military fleet." There was a pause. Then Captain Lee's voice came back, and Veltara could hear something in it that the Catherians didn't understand at first. It was humor, but human humor, the kind that came from beings who found fighting to be natural. "Ma'am, we've found that the best medicine for genocide is usually applied at high velocity. We're here to provide comprehensive aid, which includes making sure you survive to receive it." Science Coordinator Lim was frantically pulling up data on his personal tablet. "Veltara, look at this. I've been researching human military doctrine since the fleet arrived. They don't do anything small. When humans fight, they use something called overwhelming force. It means they bring so many weapons that the enemy gives up before the battle even starts. But we only asked for help moving our people to safety," Veltara said, still staring at the growing fleet. "I don't think humans see it that way," Lim replied. "Look at this report from their history. When their own people were threatened by something called pirates, they didn't just hide or run away. They built bigger ships and hunted down every pirate in their oceans. When one group of humans attacked another group's civilians, the second group didn't just defend. They invaded the attacker's homeland and made them surrender completely." Another voice came over the communications, this one from an even larger ship. The IFF tag identified it as the UEN Soul, and it was big enough to have its own gravity. "Catherian. Command, this is Admiral Park G1, commanding United Earth Naval Forces. We are establishing orbital defense positions around your homeworld. Please provide us with locations of all civilian evacuation centers so we can coordinate protection." Commander Hyun Suk looked at his staff in confusion. "Orbital defense positions? We don't have any weapons to defend with." "You do now, Admiral," Park's voice replied, and somehow Veltara knew the human had heard their conversation. "We've brought our own. Approximately 350 combat vessels, 400 support ships, and enough firepower to sterilize a continent. The Ravagers want to threaten peaceful species. Let's show them what happens when peaceful species have friends." Over the next few hours, Catherian space was transformed. Human ships took up positions around every inhabited planet and space station. Fighter patrols swept through the system, their pilots learning every asteroid and moon that could hide an enemy ship. The humans worked with incredible efficiency. They set up communication networks, established supply lines, and deployed defensive platforms in a matter of hours. It was like watching a hive of insects, if the insects were all warriors who had been practicing for this moment their entire lives. But what amazed the Catherians most was how the humans treated them. These were clearly warriors, beings who lived for battle and conquest. Yet they were polite, respectful, and seemed genuinely concerned about Catherian safety. Captain Lee himself came aboard Harmony's Rest for a face-to-face meeting. Veltara had expected a monster, a creature like the Ravagers, but wearing a different uniform. Instead, she met a middle-aged human with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Ambassador Veltara," Captain Lee said through his translator, "I want you to know that as long as the United Earth Navy is here, no harm will come to your people. We've studied the Ravager threat, and we have a plan to deal with it." "Captain," Veltara said carefully, "we are grateful for your help, but we are a peaceful people. We do not understand war or fighting. How can we assist you?" Captain Lee smiled, and it was a warm expression that reached his eyes. "You can help us by staying safe and letting us do what we do best. Your people grow things, create beauty, and spread peace throughout the galaxy. Our people protect those who create beauty and peace. It's a good partnership." Science Coordinator Lim had been studying the human ships through his telescope. "Captain Lee, your vessels are unlike anything we've ever seen. They appear to be designed solely for combat." "That's correct," Captain Lee replied without shame. "Every human ship is built to fight and win battles. We've been at war with someone or something for our entire recorded history. Pirates, invaders, natural disasters, disease, hostile wildlife, even other humans. We've learned that the best way to protect what you love is to be better at fighting than anyone who wants to hurt it. And you came all this way to protect us?" Veltara asked. We have nothing to offer you in return. Captain Lee looked genuinely surprised. Ambassador, you asked for help. That's all the reason we need. In human culture, when someone asks for help against bullies, you don't negotiate payment. You just help. That night, as Veltara looked out at the stars, she saw something that no Catherian had ever seen before. The sky was full of guardian angels, dark shapes moving between the stars, watching and waiting. For the first time since the Ravager threat began, Veltara felt safe. Not because she was hiding or running, but because she was protected. Protected by beings who understood that sometimes the only way to preserve peace was to be very, very good at war. The humans had come to give aid, but they had brought something more than medical supplies and evacuation ships. They had brought hope. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the Ravagers were about to learn that their 2-century reign of terror was coming to an end. Warlord Krextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bone Crusher, and smiled with satisfaction. His fleet of 500 ships had just dropped out of hyperspace, at the edge of Catherian space, ready for another easy conquest. The Bone Crusher was a massive vessel, painted blood red and covered with spikes and skull decorations. It looked exactly like what it was, a ship built by a species that worshipped death and destruction. Every surface was designed to look threatening, from the weapon ports that looked like screaming mouths to the hull plates that were shaped like bones. Krextar himself was 8 feet tall, covered in red scales, with claws that could tear through steel and teeth like daggers. His armor was made from the bones of enemies he had killed personally. Around his neck hung a necklace of small skulls from different alien species he had conquered. Tactical Officer Gantok, Krextar growled, his voice like grinding stone. Give me a scan of the target system. How many ships do the tree people have for us to destroy? Gantok was smaller than his commander, but just as cruel. His job was to analyze enemy defenses and find the best ways to break them. Usually this took about 5 minutes because most peaceful species had no real defenses. Scanning. Now, Warlord, Gantok replied, working at his control panel. Initial readings show... Wait, this cannot be correct. Krextar's smile faded. What do you mean, cannot be correct? Sir, I am detecting unknown vessels in the target zone. Large vessels. Many large vessels. Impossible, Krextar snarled. No species defends others without profit. The tree people have no allies. Scan again. Gantok's claws clicked nervously on his controls. Sir, I have run the scan 3 times. There are definitely unknown ships in Catherian space. They appear to be defending the herbivores. Krextar stomped over to the tactical station and shoved Gantok aside. What he saw on the screen made his blood run cold. The display showed hundreds of ships arranged in perfect military formations around every Catherian planet, but these were not the usual cargo haulers and science vessels that the Ravagers were used to fighting. These ships were clearly built for war. Their hulls were thick and angular, designed to deflect weapons fire. Their surfaces bristled with gun turrets and missile launchers. They moved with the precise coordination of a military fleet. What species are these? Krextar demanded. I do not recognize their ship designs. Unknown, sir, Gantok replied, his voice shaking slightly. But Warlord, these are not civilian vessels. These are warships. Pure warships. Krextar studied the tactical display more carefully. The unknown fleet had taken defensive positions that showed clear military thinking. They had overlapping fields of fire, protected supply lines, and mobile reserves positioned to respond to attacks from any direction. How many ships? He asked. Approximately 350 combat vessels, sir, plus support ships. 350 warships. Against his 500. The numbers still favored the Ravagers, but not by much. And these unknown ships looked like they actually knew how to fight. For the first time in his long career, Warlord Krextar felt something he had almost forgotten. Uncertainty. The communication board suddenly lit up with an incoming message. The voice that came through was speaking an unknown language, but the translation computers quickly processed it. Ravager vessels, this is the United Earth Navy. You are approaching sovereign Catherian space under hostile intent. Reverse course. Immediately, or we will consider you a threat to our allies. Krextar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his bridge. The humans wanted to threaten him? Him? The warlord who had conquered 40 worlds and enslaved a dozen species? 500 ships against 350, he told his bridge crew. They dare threaten us? Send a response. Tell these humans what happens to those who stand in our way. He opened a channel to the human fleet. Unknown species, you are interfering with Ravager operations. Withdraw immediately, or be destroyed. We are the Ravagers. We take what we want, and we want the Tree People's worlds. You have 1 minute to leave, or we will add your skulls to our collection. The response came back almost immediately. Broadcast on all frequencies so that every ship in both fleets could hear it clearly. Ravager Fleet, this is Captain Li Dongwu of the UEN Incheon. You have just threatened allies of humanity. There was a pause, and when the human voice continued, there was something in it that made even Krextar's scales crawl. It was the sound of absolute confidence. In our language, we have a saying, mess around and find out. Today, you are going to learn what that means. Krextar felt a chill run down his spine, but he pushed the feeling away. He was a Ravager warlord. He did not fear anything. Attack formation, he roared to his fleet. Show these soft skins what real warriors can do. The Ravager fleet surged forward, their ships spreading out in the traditional attack pattern that had worked against every peaceful species they had ever encountered. 500 ships moving like a red tide of death and destruction. But the humans did not respond like any enemy the Ravagers had ever faced. Instead of running or trying to negotiate, the human fleet moved with mechanical precision. Their ships formed into battle groups with overlapping defensive fields. Fighter squadrons launched from their carriers in perfect formations. Long-range missiles began firing from maximum distance. Sir, Gantok shouted over the growing noise of combat. Alerts. The humans are not following standard peaceful species combat doctrine. What do you mean? Krextar demanded, watching his forward ships engage the enemy. They are not trying to disable our ships, sir. They are shooting to kill. Every shot is aimed at critical systems. They are trying to destroy us completely. This was unheard of. Peaceful species always tried to avoid killing, even when defending themselves. They shot at engines to disable ships or used non-lethal weapons to force surrenders. But the humans were firing with lethal intent from the very beginning. The first Ravager ship to die was the destroyer Bloodfang. A human missile punched through its armor and detonated inside the reactor core. The ship simply ceased to exist in a flash of white light. Impossible! Krextar snarled. No peaceful species has weapons that powerful. But even as he spoke, more Ravager ships were dying. The humans fought with a combination of advanced technology and tactical brilliance that the Ravagers had never encountered. Their ships worked together like the fingers of a hand, supporting each other and covering weaknesses. Worse, the humans seemed to actually enjoy fighting. Their communications chatter, which Ravager listening posts picked up, was full of what could only be described as excitement. They were treating this battle like a game they were winning. Sir, we are losing ships faster than we are destroying theirs, Gantok reported, his voice now openly panicked. The humans have better armor, better weapons, and better tactics. They fight like what? Krextar roared. Like us, sir, but better. The truth hit Krextar like a physical blow. For 2 centuries, the Ravagers had been the apex predators of the galaxy. They had conquered and destroyed because no one else knew how to fight back. They had been wolves among sheep, but now they had encountered something new. Another predator species, and this one was not only better at war than they were, it was protecting the sheep. Captain Lee's voice came over the communications again, calm and professional, despite the raging battle around him. Ravager Fleet, you are taking heavy casualties. Surrender now, and we will allow your surviving crews to live as prisoners. Krextar's rage overwhelmed his growing fear. Never! Ravagers do not surrender. All ships, ramming speed. If we cannot defeat them with weapons, we will crush them with our hulls. It was the final mistake of his long career. The humans had been expecting exactly this response. As the Ravager ships accelerated toward suicidal ramming attacks, the human fleet opened up with everything they had. Point defense systems designed to stop incoming missiles proved equally effective at shredding approaching ships. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the space around Cytherian was filled with the wreckage of Ravager vessels. Of the 500 ships that had attacked, exactly 0 survived. The Bone Crusher itself died when 3 human dreadnoughts focused their fire on it simultaneously. Warlord Krextar had just enough time to realize that his species' reign of terror was over before his ship became an expanding cloud of superheated plasma. On the bridge of the UEN Seoul, Admiral Park Ji-won watched the tactical display with satisfaction. "All Ravager vessels destroyed, Admiral," reported her tactical officer. "0 human casualties." "Excellent," Admiral Park replied. "Send a message to Cytherian Command. Tell them the threat has been neutralized. Then prepare a full battle report. For Earth Command, I have a feeling this is just the beginning. In the galaxy beyond, other Ravager fleets received the news with shock and disbelief. For the first time in their species' history, a Ravager fleet had been completely destroyed. Not defeated, not driven off, but annihilated. The age of Ravager dominance was over. The age of human protection had begun. The great crystal chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Even the usual humming of the translation machines seemed muted as hundreds of alien representatives stared at the holographic display floating above the center table. The display showed the aftermath of the Battle of Cytherian space. Floating debris fields where the Ravager fleet had been completely destroyed, human ships moving in perfect formation through the wreckage, searching for survivors to rescue. The tactical summary was impossible to argue with. 500 Ravager ships destroyed, 0 human losses. Council Leader Zephyron's mandibles clicked nervously as he read the report for the 5th time. Around the chamber, delegates whispered to each other in dozens of languages, their translation devices working overtime to keep up with the rapid exchange of shocked comments. Admiral Park Ji-won stood in the center of the chamber, her crisp white uniform a stark contrast to the flowing robes and natural forms of the alien delegates. She looked completely calm, as if the total destruction of the galaxy's most feared military force was just another day at the office. "Admiral Park," Zephyron began, his voice uncertain. "When the Council requested aid for the Cytherian situation, we meant medical supplies, evacuation ships, perhaps some defensive advisors." "With respect, Council Leader," Admiral Park replied, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. "You requested military assistance from a species whose planet is classified as a Class 12 death world. Did you expect us to send medical techs and social workers?" Dr. Kim Sora stepped forward from behind the Admiral. As humanity's chief diplomatic advisor, she had spent the past week preparing for this moment. She had studied every species in the Council, learned their customs and concerns, and figured out exactly how to explain what had just happened. "Honored delegates," Dr. Kim said, her voice warm but firm. "I think there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about how humans approach the concept of aid." She gestured to the holographic display, which shifted to show human ships protecting Cytherian evacuation transports. When peaceful species give aid, they provide comfort and support while hoping the problem goes away on its own. When humans give aid, we eliminate the source of the problem permanently. Ambassador Veltara, who had been invited to attend as a witness, spoke up from her floating platform. "Dr. Kim is correct. The humans did not just save my people. They solved our problem completely. The Ravagers who threatened us are gone. All of them." The chamber erupted in hushed murmurs. The concept was almost unthinkable to most of the peaceful species present. They had spent centuries trying to avoid the Ravagers, hoping to hide or negotiate or simply survive until the threat passed. The idea of actually destroying the threat had never occurred to them. Fleet Captain Oh Min-ho, representing the human military forces, stepped forward. He was a big man with the confident bearing of someone who had spent his life in combat. "The Ravagers terrorized this galaxy for over 2 centuries because no one stood up to them. That ends now. Any species under human protection will remain under human protection." "But surely," interrupted the delegate from the peaceful valleys, "this was an isolated incident. The Ravagers have many fleets. They will return with greater numbers." Admiral Park smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Actually, they won't. While we were destroying their 5th fleet at Cytherian, Our other battle groups were engaging Ravager forces throughout the galaxy. In the past week, we have eliminated their 2nd, 7th, and 9th fleets. Their main battle fleet is currently being hunted by Admiral Chen's task force. The silence in the chamber was deafening. In 1 week, humanity had accomplished what the entire galaxy had failed to do in 2 centuries. They had not just defeated the Ravagers, they were systematically destroying them. Ambassador Mortex from the Garden Worlds raised a tentative hand. "Admiral, what happens now? What do humans want in return for this protection?" It was the question everyone had been afraid to ask. In galactic politics, nothing came free. Every favor required payment. Every alliance had a price. The peaceful species were terrified that humans would demand tribute or territory or slaves in exchange for their military service. Admiral Park looked genuinely surprised by the question. "Want in return? We don't want anything. You asked for help and we helped. That's what friends do." The concept was so foreign to galactic politics that several delegates had to ask their translators to repeat it. Species that could destroy entire fleets with no losses, asking for nothing in return? It went against everything they understood about how powerful civilizations behaved. Dr. Kim could see the confusion and fear in the alien faces around her. She decided to try a different approach. "Let me tell you about human history," she said, activating a new holographic display. "For thousands of years, humans fought each other in terrible wars. We nearly destroyed our own planet several times, but we learned something important from all that fighting." The display showed scenes from human history, soldiers protecting civilians, rescue workers saving disaster victims, peacekeepers standing between warring factions. We learned that the strongest species has a responsibility to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We call it noblesse oblige. It means that having power comes with the duty to use that power for good. Ambassador Veltara spoke up again, her voice filled with wonder. "The humans saved my entire species, and they want nothing in return. They risked their own lives to fight creatures they had never met, to protect people they barely knew." "Because it was the right thing to do," Captain O said simply. "The Ravagers were bullies who hurt peaceful people. We don't like bullies." Council leader Zephron was struggling to process this information. In his 1,000 years of diplomatic service, he had never encountered a species that used military force purely for altruistic reasons. "Admiral Park," he said carefully, "what assurance do we have that humans will not become the new threat? You have demonstrated the ability to destroy any fleet in the galaxy. How do we know you will not follow the Ravager path?" For the first time since entering the chamber, Admiral Park's expression softened. "Because, Council Leader, humans know what it's like to be afraid. We know what it's like to face extinction. We've been there ourselves many times. We would never inflict that terror on innocent people." She gestured to the other human officers present. "Every person in my fleet volunteers to serve. No one forces them to fight. They choose to put their lives at risk to protect others because they believe it's right. That's not the mindset of conquerors." As if to prove her point, Commander Yoon Jae-sung stepped forward with a data pad. "Admiral, we're receiving priority messages from across the galaxy. 14 different species are requesting human protection from various threats. 3 systems are asking for assistance against remaining Ravager forces. 2 civilizations want help with pirate problems. 1 species is asking for protection from something called the Crystal Devourers." The chamber buzzed with excitement. Word of humanity's victory was spreading through the galaxy faster than hyperspace communications. For the first time in centuries, peaceful species had hoped that they could live without fear. Admiral Park looked at the long list of requests and nodded. "Send replies to all of them. Tell them that the United Earth Navy stands ready to assist any peaceful species against aggressive threats. No payment required, no strings attached." Ambassador Veltara stood up on her platform, her forearms raised in the traditional Cytherian gesture of joy. "The Cytherian Collective formally requests to join the Human Alliance. We offer our friendship, our knowledge of agriculture and biotechnology, and our eternal gratitude." Within minutes, 6 other species had made similar requests. The Crystal Singers offered their knowledge of harmonic technology. The Water Worlds provided advanced terraforming techniques. The Rock Builders shared their expertise in constructing massive space habitats. Dr. Kim watched the proceedings with satisfaction. This was exactly what she had hoped would happen. Admiral, I think we're witnessing the birth of something new. Not an empire built on conquest, but an alliance built on mutual protection and cooperation. Captain O grinned as he watched more species volunteering to join the human alliance. Admiral, I have a feeling our peacekeeping duties are about to get a lot more interesting. Admiral Park nodded, already thinking about the logistics of protecting dozens of star systems across the galaxy. Commander Yoon, send a message to Earth Command. We're going to need more ships, a lot more ships. As the council session continued, representatives began discussing practical matters: trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and cultural exchange programs. For the first time in galactic history, peaceful species were planning for a future without fear. In the days that followed, the galaxy learned that there were different kinds of strength. The Ravagers had been strong in their ability to destroy and conquer, but humans were strong in their willingness to protect and defend. And that second kind of strength, it turned out, was much more powerful than the first. The age of terror was over. The age of protection had begun. And at the center of it all were the humans, the species that had turned a simple request for aid into a galaxy-wide revolution. They had not just saved the Catherians. They had saved everyone,